Hi, I'm Joe,
And I'm Mike.
and you're listening to How Many Fingers Am I Holding Up? The podcast. And this week, we'll be reviewing Room.
You are tearing me apart, Lisa! Oh, wait, was it the wrong movie?
Welcome to How Many Fingers Am I Holding Up? Featuring two guys getting schnookered and reviewing movies in a weekly podcast formation.
Thanks to my good friend Tara for that synonym suggestion. BB Canetto on Twitter again. She dared us to shout her out again, and we fucking did. So, thank you, Tara, and you're welcome, Tara.
Whoa.
2 in 1.
You got it, boss.
You said it, Chief. So this week we're drinking, choking down Midnight Moon Moonshine, which is going to be an interesting one.
I'm giving Mike this look like...
What are we doing? We've been trying to break out from beer so it's not just beers all the time.
I think this is our second time not having...
I wanted to bring bourbon down, but I already moved the bourbon I was planning on bringing into a decanter, so I couldn't really transport it. So this was the next best thing I had.
Understandably. Okay. Here we go.
Oh, that's sweet. That's like pure sugar.
Whoa.
Whoa.
Oh, man. It burns all the way down.
Yeah.
I'm going to have some...
This is going to be a good one.
Yeah. All right.
We're off to a great start tonight.
Wow. All right.
So I got here, got all my stuff to start getting unpacked so we could start recording.
Right.
So I brought my laptop charger. I brought my mouse.
Right.
Brought my mouse pad. Brought 2 microphones, 2 cables. I brought my audio interface. Brought all that. What did I forget?
Mike forgot his laptop. And
so we've just been waiting around for the past 2 hours for someone to bring us a laptop.
Yeah, and Mike has a Mac, and I just I love PC, but we couldn't figure out the whole USB situation.
Yeah, that was a disaster.
Long story short, we had to wait for my girlfriend to get home because she has a MacBook. And so, thank you, Sabri.
So now it's 12:06 a.m.
That's what it is.
It's a new day.
It's a new day, and
we're recording the first of 4 episodes.
Yeah, we have a whole batch to go, baby. So it's gonna be...
Bear with us, fingerers.
All night long. All night. All night long. Okay, let's... Hey, we have a lot ahead of us. Let's just waste some time.
So the IMDb description for this movie, just to start things off. After 5-year-old Jack and his mother escape from the enclosed surroundings that Jack has known his entire life, the boy makes a thrilling discovery.
Spoiler alert, first of all. I feel like I'm glad I didn't watch the trailer, because in the trailer this is one of the first movies I didn't see the trailer before I watched the movie.
Yeah, I don't think I ever saw a trailer for it
either. And like it kind of shows the entire movie, and I was like, glad I didn't see this.
Yeah. I mean, I knew what it was about going into it, but
right.
I didn't watch the trailer. That's a weird... Now that I'm looking at the IMDb description, is really weird, because the boy makes a thrilling discovery, like just one
thing,
singular discovery, which is not the case at all.
Yeah,
there's a lot of things that he discovers.
I guess maybe the things exist outside of Room.
Yeah,
that could be.
It's just strange.
All right, so
Joe notes.
Yeah, this is how we start off these episodes.
Joe, get out Joe notes.
Is Joe notes.
Not my notes, the Joe notes.
The Joe notes. All right. So, before I just reluctantly recount this
that moonshine.
Emotion.
I'm sorry, Joe. I'm sorry.
I'm going to take a sip real quick, too. Ooh.
Like, do we splash water in that?
Chase it with beer.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Oh god, I need to get that taste out of
We
my
can
mouth.
do this. We can do this.
All right. And this was supposed to be like the sober, more somber episode. But like what you don't know also is while we were waiting 3 hours for a laptop, Mike and I just kept drinking.
Yeah, what else could you do?
So this is maybe one of the drunkest first episodes we've done. Again, we still got a batch more. So, okay.
Can only get better, as we always say.
Yeah. So let's see if I can read my notes. Okay. So like I was saying before, before I just reluctantly recount this just emotionally exhausting, transcendently traumatic movie-going experience, I'd like to do as I usually do and just talk about the director of the film, Lenny Abramson, who I think he's Irish.
Yes.
Yeah. I think, both he and Emma Donoghue, who wrote the screenplay and the source material, the best-selling novel by the same name, they both live in Dublin, Ireland. So technically, I think this film is actually considered a Canadian-Irish drama.
Where's the Canadian part come from?
I think
Filmed in Canada? Or?
The creators are Irish, and it was filmed in the six with my ass. My neighbors hate me. You know how that should go.
Maybe they're Drake fans.
Or as non-believers refer to it as Toronto.
Non-believers.
Non-believers of the Six God.
So this is a view from the Six.
When they're standing in the hospital room. Mom, what is this? Views from the Six. It's fire.
Mom, what's outside room? The Six.
But more about Lenny Abramson. Before Room, he directed Adam and Paul, Garage, What Richard Did, which I've actually heard is fantastic. I've never got around to seeing it or finding it, and Frank.
Yeah, that's the only one that I recognize when looking at his list is Frank. And I still haven't seen that yet, but I heard great things.
All right, the film about Donald Gleason joining a band with Maggie Gyllenhaal and Michael Fassbender dressed in a papier-mâché head.
Mm-hmm.
Which, honestly, a film, in my opinion, had a lot of hype, but ultimately came up short.
Oh, you saw it?
Yeah. It's, it's on Netflix.
Oh, dope.
It's been on Netflix almost since when it came out. But again, I think it came up short. Again, that's just me and everybody else I've talked to.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought that was like a festival favorite for a while.
I mean, I encourage you to watch it on Netflix now and form an opinion of your own.
All right.
Okay. But seriously, though, again, before we get into this film, I do want to try something. What I want to do is take turns establishing like a before and after opinion of this film. Mm-hmm. Now, I say this because the team that both promoted and distributed this film should just be shot. I didn't see or hear anything about this film at all.
Yeah.
Room had a nationwide release the same week that Bridge of Spies did. That's so fucking long ago. That was our second episode. But I'm going to shut up now, and you can go first. You can tell me, what were your before thoughts before you walked into this theater?
Before I saw them? Well, I mean, I think the first time I heard about it was just in terms of Oscar buzz. I do not know a single person that saw the movie. Mm-hmm. I didn't see a single trailer anywhere. I didn't see an advertisement anywhere,
right.
Until it started getting Oscar buzz and then basically when it was announced too. What did I think beforehand? I don't know. I feel like I didn't really know enough to think anything beforehand. I thought that it was taking a spot from Carol was probably my
right.
feeling this in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Not having seen those at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And really all I had just heard was that the Brie Larson was phenomenal for the acting.
I didn't even hear that. Yeah.
But again, even up until seeing it, I didn't watch a trailer. I hadn't really seen pictures of anyone from the film.
Right.
So I really had very few expectations going in.
Yeah. I kind of, again, I pretty much had the same thing. For me, Room was just some Oprah's book club book that my mom had been trying to push on people for several years.
Yeah.
I don't even know if it might have just been a bestseller, but I know she's had it for a while. And she would always pitch the novel as like, oh, the little boy narrates the entire story. And I was like...
Sounds like a horrible movie.
I know, yeah. And I was like, with that detail, just Room, I just like swore that like Room and I would never cross paths in like this lifetime. I was like, that sounds terrible. Lifetime. Yeah, like speaking of Lifetime, as I walked into the theater, I was literally preparing myself. I was like, I'm about to watch like a Lifetime movie.
Yeah, I could see that.
That's what it seems like. However, I had a very different experience. And before we talk about that, Mike, since you're a little better at describing plots, would you like to give it a whirl of like how this film plays out a little?
All right, so I mean, you open up in Room, and we're introduced to now I can't remember. Oh, Joy. Joy is the
or Ma.
Ma, yeah. And at first, if you haven't seen any of like the plot at first, you're just basically watching them, Ma, Joy, and Jack, this little boy who I think he first thing he says when he wakes up is Mom 5. So
Right.
it's his 5th birthday, and they make a birthday cake, and they're just in this tiny, shitty looking apartment type room. And then you come to realize that they can't leave. They're kept here captive by someone.
Right.
And then it's actually a shed that's got some code going on that some
Right.
creepy guy comes in.
Some creepy guy comes in.
Creepy guy comes in and does a dance in Joe's kitchen. One of our guests just walked in. Yeah, so they're held hostage in this little shed where a man comes in and forces Joy to have sex with him against her will, and gives them Sunday treats every Sunday. And then I think the turning point is basically her realizing that Jack is of a certain age and that she doesn't want to raise her kid here. I mean, not that anyone ever wanted to raise their kid here.
Right. Sorry, I'm motioning to Joe. I said, "Put that beer away. We're drinking moonshine."
We're drinking moonshine.
The moonshine is the drink of the yeah. Joe motioned to woo.
Oh god, I just took another sip. It's
getting
better as the ice dissolves, but
I almost took another sip and just decided not to.
I'm all over the place with this plot. But basically, they decide that they need to get out. And
Well, let's keep it to the first half first. But I mean, yeah. I don't fucking know.
Don't fucking tell me what to
whatever
do.
You do, you, Mike.
I don't know. Do we want to get into the second half now, or did you have more to say about the?
No. I mean, I don't really know. I think I saw this. Just they're almost two different films, like the first half and second
that's
half.
definitely true.
I mean, I don't know.
Go on with your notes. Go on with your Joe notes.
I mean, I don't even have notes relating to that. I would just pick up at my next point, whatever that is. Oh, which I was going to talk about confusing Room with The Room.
Oh, yeah.
If you want to talk about that, too.
Yeah, so I went to go buy a ticket for this, and I said, hey, can I have a ticket for The Room? And the theater clerk said, yeah, but just so you know, it's Room. It's not The Room. There's a big difference. We made a joke about that in our intro, because there is the 2003 film by, what's his name?
Tommy Wiseau.
Tommy Wiseau, the often criticized cult favorite, The Room, which is very, very different film from this.
It is, yes.
And then you had something with that too, right?
I mean, it wasn't exactly that, but I mean, I walked up to the where you buy the ticket. I can't think of the official name of it now. Kiosk, I guess. Yeah, that was just weird. She was like, she was like kind of flirting with me, and I was like, all right. And then and then she was just like randomly like now I can't remember how I said it to you, but she was like almost like, don't go see this movie. Go read the book first. I've heard it's better. I'm like, well, no, I'm going to go see this movie.
I'm here. Yeah. I'm going to watch the movie.
It was just a very weird interaction.
I think she said something like, I mean, do you want me to like return this ticket?
Right,
and you
right,
can go read the book?
I was just like, what?
No, I'm not going to do that.
But there has been a lot of comical confusion. I can't even just think of an example, but there's been like multiple people that I've run into that have had like the confusion between this and Tommy Wiseau's Room. And I feel like
it's funny because like The Room that came out in 2003, even the novel for this didn't come out till 2010. Right. So like part of me, we were joking, the girl I saw it with, Rowan, like, did she want to name it The Room? And then she was like, no, I can't. She
Googled it.
I have to call it just Room. But then I guess you learned that that's literally how Jack refers to it, is Room, and just kind of his younger English dialect, or whatever you want to.
I literally have that in my notes. It says Room. You know, Room isn't just named Room to distinguish itself from a terrible movie. Room is appropriately named Room just because within the film, both Ma, or Joy, and Jack use room as like a proper noun the entire time, you know?
Yeah, like they do with other things in Room.
Right, yeah. I mean, like, yeah, I thought it was the opening scene, but maybe the birthday's more the opening scene. But, like, Jack will go around Room and sort of greet multiple inanimate objects. Like,
I think it is on his birthday, yeah. And he's like,
okay.
Good morning, this.
Yeah,
good morning,
room.
Second chair. Good morning,
sink.
toilet. Good morning.
Good morning, TV. Yeah. And it has, like, I love that because it has that same exact cadence as, like, that children's book, like, good night, moon, good night. And,
but also, like, it introduces everything that's in Room, and it, like, it's a great way to just establish the setting of, like, oh, all right, we're literally in one room that has everything in it.
Right, yeah. And it establishes so many things because, like, not only do they revisit this dialogue or monologue at the end, but it also kind of like sets up like a morning ritual kind of thing. And, you know, so they do that, so he does that, and then you watch like Jack and Ma stretch and exercise and eat breakfast. The enclosed room, like in all those shots, really start to make you feel like you're kind of a fly on the wall. Like you're viewing some very intimate time between like a mother and son that you're not like really supposed to see. And this is going to sound like so immature, and I was hoping I'd be more sober for this. But when they're stretching and like doing all this, or just being around the room, and again, you feel like you're a fly on the wall, you can obviously tell, like, you know, Brie Larson isn't wearing a bra. And just
You're talking about the pokey nipple.
follow me for like a minute. And I say this because it's just one of those rare times where something like that doesn't take me out of a film. It's not like, oh, Brie Larson's hot, or like, oh, boobies. Like, it makes me like, I guess like it makes me feel something else. Like this filmmaking detail essentially like represents a symptom of a circumstance. And it's not to say that, you know, not all girls don't walk around their house in the privacy of their own home without a bra on, but like, you know, it's kind of like,
well, I don't know if they were thinking as far as I ended up thinking of it, but you come to find out later that because of their circumstances, she's been breastfeeding him the entire time.
Exactly.
And I started to think of it as like that, just in terms of
oh, really?
Yeah.
I see. That was such an interesting detail.
But I don't know if they thought that deeply, or if that's just me being a creep and thinking that deeply.
See, I thought the not wearing a bra most of the time was it was privacy. It was like 24/7 privacy. So like, why not?
There's
just be comfortable.
No
kind
reason
of,
to wear it.
Yeah, this is like the life that we live right now.
I mean, she doesn't wear makeup the entire time.
Right,
like,
right.
He's got his hair grown out. That was one of the other details that I loved. It's just like, because if you're trying to imagine like a kid growing up and not only not having a father influence, but having no male influence and no influence but his mother whatsoever. Just like the way he carries himself, and that maybe that'll carry us into just talking about Jacob Tremblay, the kid, and his acting. Like, my God, has there ever been a kid that good? Like in like a movie?
I know.
But just his mannerisms are so like I mean, and a lot of kids are too, but they're so like feminism or feminist and just like
effeminate,
yeah, whatever the word is. Like, and you can just tell that the director was that's probably a conscious decision, because he's raised there with this woman that's the only person that he ever has any contact with whatsoever, and then, you know, the long hair on top of that, and just like the costume design for him too, just how like just weird clothes that he was
just
wearing.
like lost in the past kind of clothing.
Oh yeah, like and just like kids underwear and no bottoms all the time. Like
but that was another. I think that was another before that I missed though. And was like the buzz surrounding Jacob Tremblay, just because people were like,
I heard about Brie Larson. I didn't hear any buzz around
I
him.
mostly heard about him, and it was just like he could be up for Best Actor kind of thing. Like before, like any sort of nominations were announced, and like, you know, just like the you know, oh, the kid narrates the whole story. Like, him being like up for best actor before I saw this film was fucking ridiculous to me.
Yeah.
I was just kind of like, I don't even know why, but it rubbed me the wrong way. However, after seeing it, I wouldn't have been upset if he were nominated.
No,
you know?
yeah, and like I think going back to like the before thing, like not that I didn't see a trailer, but I think I saw like a spot at one point maybe that was like literally like 15 seconds or something like that. It might have been for like the Golden Globes, I think, actually one of those spots.
Okay, yeah.
And they had a clip of him doing like the narration that he does, which I'm assuming is just grabbed right from the book. And like that's like the part that I don't really like about his performance, and I can't really blame him because he's reading lines that are literally like so kiddish, whereas the rest of it not that I doubt it was improv, but it felt so natural. Rest of it, the way that it was performed. And that's the only part I didn't like of his performance was those weird narration lines. So when I saw that, I was like expecting that's what the entire movie was going to be.
Like I had a feeling about that too.
There was Todd McCarthy for The Hollywood Reporter. I love this word that he uses when he's talking about his performance, is saying that it's not cloying, which is just like I forget what the actual dictionary definition of it is, but that's just like the perfect word to describe it. And like when the narration does feel cloying though, but the rest of the movie doesn't feel cloying. So when I saw that like spot, I was like, oh, the entire movie is just going to be him like this. But he has like so many like ranges of emotion for being, I'm not sure how old the kid actually is, but he's not very old. And
he's not. I mean,
it's like a multi-layered performance. He's got like progression throughout like the entire film. It reminded me of I'm gonna butcher this trying to pronounce this, but the girl from Beasts of the Southern Wild, Quvenzhané Wallis, something like that.
Because she was up for Best Actress, right?
She was, and that's why I like. It's great that Joe is here for this comment, but why is Matt Damon up for an Oscar and this kid isn't?
Yeah, this kid isn't. Right, yeah.
Fuck Matt Damon.
Yeah.
I mean, like, he was really good, and it kind of made me even, like, question, like, I mean, I still have that part of me that's like, how was he so good? Because kids are just kids. And I feel like, granted, I'm sure, like, his parents had to be there, and maybe, like, Brie Larson was, you know, like, a great person to be opposite of. And the people that work together to make a comfortable environment for him, just the crew and everything. And again, hats off to the fucking director, Lenny Abramson, for taking on, like, a really serious film and being like, yeah, and a child's gonna be the star, kind of like...
I'm gonna look up his age, because he could also just be one of those...
9.
He's 9?
Jeez.
Alright, so it is older than the character, because the character's 5.
But still.
Yeah, that's still young to be portraying that kind of... Because, like, you know, like, there's the scenes where he's angry at his mom, and he plays that well. He plays the happy scenes well. He plays like the curiosity of like a kid well,
right?
Just like all like there was no part that I wasn't like completely in the immersion of him being this Jack kid, which is so rare for a child actor.
No,
like,
that's
usually
what I was
it's
about to
like
say, yeah.
Usually you know forgive these bad child performances because you know
they're kids.
Yeah, they're kids. Like you can't expect them to
they're just reading lines.
Yeah. So it's always just so rare to see a kid that like lets you completely be immersed in the movie.
I feel like another part of why he was so good too, I mean, not to discount him, but the editor too. I feel like they really nailed like the awkward pacing of like the way a child will like cut you off or ask like too many questions almost. Like there was I have like some sort of quote. I'm not gonna read it all the way. But it's when she finally tries to like break out to him that like, oh, there's more beyond room.
Yeah.
And like right off the bat, she's like, well, I wasn't like, she's describing the Alice in Wonderland metaphor, and she's like, right, well, like I wasn't always in room. I'm like Alice. I was a little girl named Joy, and like just cutting her off. He's like, nah, and it's like it's so like fucking real.
Yeah.
And then he's like, or he's like, what was the dog's name? Or like, you know, like, and she's like, well, there was no dog. Yeah. And he, like, old Nick tricked me. And he's like, I want another story. Like, this is stupid. And she's like, well, you can't pick another story. Yeah. And I just thought, like, that conversation was like, that was real.
Well, tying that into Brie Larson, who is also, like, fantastic. Like,
yeah.
I think the best aspect that she portrays in this is just, like, that, like, reluctant like patience to just like, you can just see like she won't necessarily roll her eyes, but you can just see in her eyes just like, please God, stop asking me these questions, just like just do what I say, like it's just us in this room,
and the
that I've been in
relationship
for 7 years
too is the chemistry between them is phenomenal.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, because there's just like that kind of, he's questioning, but she's also built up this sort of authority, like we're like, it's what I say goes, because like I'm protecting you, kind of, and like this maternal like figure takes over.
That's another thing that's impressive on his part, is because a lot of times it's hard to find that like connection between a child actor and like an older actor, and that's one of the things that you're usually forgiving in a movie, is just like, all right, I know that's not his kid or his daughter, but like in this, like you totally believe like that they're just mother and child, like in this room.
Right.
So definitely a great acting piece, and she's definitely well deserving of that Oscar. And I think she, along with that reluctant patience, she like portrays like the frustration of being a parent, like not only like a regular parent, but a parent under like horrible circumstances this, like. Just because you don't want to really blow up on your kid, and then when you do, you feel bad about it. Like there's the one scene where she yells at him, and then immediately after she's like, "I'm sorry," and she like holds him. Which is the other thing that's like cool, not cool, but like interesting and dynamic about the story, is just like parenting in one room. Like usually go to your room, go somewhere else, but there's nowhere to go. So like when you yell at the kid, then you immediately have to see right in the same room the way he's crying, the way he's affected by your cajoling.
Right. Start choking on this moonshine.
It's definitely getting better as the ice melts.
Yeah. A comparison that I made almost immediately,
or as we get more drunk.
Yeah. A comparison that I made almost immediately. And I'm surprised I didn't see like really anybody else make this comparison, but The Lovely Bones, again, it was...
No, I was definitely thinking of Lovely Bones the entire time.
But it was a
more so the book than the movie, but yeah.
Right, yeah. But it was a film that was nominated for Best Picture not too long ago, and even to the point where I felt like Old Nick was fashioned almost identically to like Stanley Tucci's character in The Lovely Bones. Like he had like those same glasses and the same like outfit.
Yeah,
kind
I
of
feel like that's
scruff.
like it's not the greatest costume choice. I think that's just a little too easy. Like, all creepy guys wear those like weird glasses.
He was just missing like his free candy van, like like which is really like, he was like, "Can you help me for my lost puppy?" Like but I feel like we're far enough into this plot and podcast. I don't know why I stopped us before, but I feel like we can...
I don't know if it's really a spoiler. Just because, I mean, also going back to the before, I guess I should have said this. I didn't realize... I thought that the movie took place starting from when they got out. I didn't realize that we were going to have a whole first half seeing them in the room.
Because apparently that's what the book is like.
Oh, is starting when they got out? Or?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Maybe
or something, or maybe it's just like, it's not a long time that they're in the room, as in the movie it spends like a large... It's almost the first half, I want to say. The first half of the film is in the room.
Yeah, it's pretty much half and half.
Right.
That's why I guess I feel like it's not too much of a spoiler, but spoiler alert anyway. She reaches a point where she notices that he's getting older, and that he can probably help her with stuff more now, and B, that just he can't, like he's getting to a point where he's going to start questioning that there is a world outside.
I felt like there was a buildup too, where like it was kind of like it started with like that, like when he like comes out of like the closet and he's looking at him or Old Nick when he's sleeping, and then there's like Brie Larson wakes up and she attacks Old Nick because she thinks he's attacking Jack, and then he attacks her, and then he cuts off the power for them for 2 days, and when he turns it back on, there's sort of like some weird depression sleep that she goes into for like an entire day.
Yeah, I feel like he has a line about that. I forget. I think he calls them like gone days or something like that.
Right.
Jack does, which I thought was a cool phrase for like a kid to have about that.
But it was also like, I feel like she felt like she should almost be celebrating like the power's back on, but I felt like maybe that's what like, she thought was going to push them to like finally get out of there kind of like thing. And then there's something else that happens that like she gets...
Well, even when the power goes out, she like, because it's like this big thick steel door that like they obviously can't do anything to, and they don't know the code. But as soon as she realizes the power's out, she goes immediately to the door and tries to like pry the door open.
Right.
And it doesn't work. And then she just gives up. But like, I think that was her first thought was like, oh, the power's out. Maybe the door will like allow us to get out.
Right.
But yeah, so she is like, comes to this realization that we have to get out soon. Like I can't live my life here. I think she even has a line about, you know, being in this room for 7 years or something like that.
Right.
So she at first concocts this plan to basically like soak Jack's face in hot rags so that it appears like he is like really, really sick from the power being out for those 2 days and being cold. And she's like trying to coach him like, oh, all right, like you have, I'm going to give you this note in your pocket that says everything about our situation. We're going to get Nick to take you to the hospital. And when he does, as soon as you can, like give this to a nurse. And I think she says like, say like I'm Joy Newsom's son or something like that. Right. But then obviously old Nick comes. He's not down with that. He won't take him to the hospital. He's like, oh, I'll just get him some stronger medicine or something like that. So
it may be one of the most disturbing scenes in the entire movie is before he comes in and Ma or Brie Larson forces herself to throw up on her son.
Yeah.
Because she, quote unquote, wants to make him smell like sick. And like, that is just like almost.
And he's like, well, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah, no,
and he's
that almost seems like a point where it's not acting anymore, and it's like, Mom, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, in like having your mom throw up on your hair, and it's like you felt so. It just this film made me feel things I've never felt in a film before. I was like, whoa.
Yeah, so that doesn't work when old Nick he's just like, oh, I'll just get him some stronger medicine,
antibiotics. He's definitely
but
spooked.
He does buy it. He buys it. He's sick, but he's not going to take him to the hospital.
He's a little too spooked to take him to the hospital. Like that won't bring up too many questions. Like I can, that seems realistic.
Well, yeah, because then he's got to be like, oh, whose kid is this?
Exactly.
Like, yeah, I mean, not a great plan to begin with. So old Nick leaves, and then that was like, I thought that was a really depressing moment of like Jack having to go through all that, and then it didn't even work. And he was scared about going to the hospital too. And I think he even says after that, like, am I still going to the hospital? And she's like, no, not now. So then their next plan is to basically fake that Jack has died and to roll him up in a rug on the floor so that Nick won't have to look at him. And I guess the other thing we should probably get into is that Jack has never really had like direct contact with old Nick.
Right.
Out of Joy's insistence. So basically, whenever old Nick comes over, Jack goes to a wardrobe, which is exactly that, a wardrobe that they've set up a little bed in.
Right.
And he's supposed to go and sleep in there so that old Nick can have sex with Joy, which is still just so disturbing.
Right.
There's like the one scene, the first time you see it, where it's Jack is like looking through the cracks of the wardrobe and he just sees old Nick drop his pants and he's just got like old man like not tighty whities but like briefs on. It's just like that was so creepy. So he hasn't really had any contact with old Nick, although old Nick does know that he exists, and that's another creepy, I don't know, realistic, because I've never met anyone like this, but the line where old Nick sees the birthday cake the first time he comes over in the film, and he's like, oh, is it his birthday? You should have told me. I would have got him a present.
Right.
Which is just like, I don't know. That made me feel like sick to my stomach when I heard that line, because it's like, that I think truly shows like how disturbed this guy is, that he doesn't realize how fucked up it is that he has gotten this girl pregnant that he kidnapped and raped and is continually raping, but he still feels some kind of weird connection to that child, to the point where he's like, oh yeah, I would have got him a birthday present. Like,
and here's one of the, I don't know if I'm going to sidetrack this whole plot further discussion or whatever. But another, there's a lot of delicate decisions made through this film by the filmmaker. And I feel like one that was very tastefully done is that the film didn't harp on rape, really, which is a really big part of the film.
Yeah.
Like, Room is essentially just a prison fashioned by, like, a sexual psychopath.
Yeah.
However, this whole unfortunate circumstance that, Jack and Ma are in almost just dwarfs, like, the heinous act of rape. yeah, for example, yeah, like he is put into that
Well,
closet
especially
every night.
because old Nick, he almost turns it into like, in his like twisted fucking mind, he turns it into like a relationship that they're having.
Yes.
Like when the power goes out,
Right.
or maybe it's before that, when he like, because he always on Sunday, they call it Sunday treat. He always comes on Sundays. That's when he rapes Joy,
And brings over the
but
groceries.
he brings over the groceries for the week. And
Exactly.
if she asks for something, like she asked for jeans one time,
like they get one thing.
yeah, like what Sunday treat is what they call it, and he'll bring it over. And like when she'll complain about like what they brought, or I think she says like, oh, like you didn't bring the vitamins this time, and he's like, oh, well, they don't do anything and they're expensive. And she's like, well, he needs the vitamins, and he's just basically like complaining about like the price of everything. And then he gets into this rant where he's like, you know, who do you think like provides all this stuff for you? Like, you don't go out and work. Well, like, yeah, she can't go out and work. You've locked her in like a shed. Like,
there's another like surreal moment where he's like, you haven't been out there. You don't know how this economy is. And it's
yeah,
like,
I mean,
yeah,
like
no
he's,
shit.
he's almost treating her like a nagging wife rather
right.
than someone that he's like locked up in his shed. Like, you know, I'm out there working my ass off for you guys, like providing for you guys. Like he's almost like justified it in his own like
Right.
twisted mind. And that was another part that just was great as far as filmmaking, but just made me feel very, very uncomfortable.
Right, but back to the rape thing or whatever. Back to the rape thing.
That rape stuff.
There is a point where Jack is in the closet, or what is it? Wardrobe that he's sleeping in, and old Nick hears him, and he's like about to come over, and it's a very like moment, like where he's about to like open the doors up, kind of, to like expose
He's
Jack.
even talking. He's like, "Hey, little buddy."
Right, yeah, and he's got like a candy bar.
You want a
Yeah.
treat? Oh God, he does have candy.
Right, yeah.
Of course, he has candy.
But Joy like diverts his attention by presumably sort of doing some sort of sexual
come back to bed.
act
Come back to bed,
off screen.
please. Yeah.
Which makes him be like, "Didn't your mom ever teach you no manners or something?" And so she's obviously doing something that's like some sort of sexual act off screen. So even, you know, it's just like there's something bigger. Like she's willing to take that to protect this even larger situation that they're in.
Well, she's accepted it as part of the reality. Like, they obviously can't get out, and I think it's just this kind of feeling of like, well, if I perform well, then you know, maybe I'll get a better Sunday treat, or he'll keep bringing the Sunday treats. Like,
and even like post room, which I'm gonna skip a little ahead in the future just to make a point. But at one point, she does try to take her own life, post room, and like it's not because of everything they've gone through, everything that she's gone through, but it's about like more of like, I should have made a better life for Jack kind of thing. So it's never really about that, because there's something so much bigger. But I think like so many other films can use that as a crutch, and I'm digging myself into a hole because rape is such a fucking terrible thing. And I'm not saying that, you know, it's not that bad, but like this is such fucking dire
I mean,
straits.
there's so
that,
much fucked up stuff going on here that it's like, it's kind of just, you know, another card in this fucked up deck, as opposed to being, you know, what in most instances would be the worst thing ever. Like, it almost pales in comparison to just the act of keeping someone against their will for a long time, brainwashing them in that way, like keeping them in one room.
Right.
You know, just everything that they're deprived of, not only the dignity through the rape, but just like everything, like the joys of every kind of pleasure in life.
What a fucking terribly ironic name.
Yeah, brilliant in the same way. But then I guess, where did we leave off with? They're trying to. Oh, okay. So she has this weird thing where she doesn't want. That's why we were talking about wardrobe. She does not want old Nick to see him. She doesn't want old Nick to touch him. That's why when you know Nick starts going over to the wardrobe the one time, she's like, please come back to bed, please. She just does not want, you know, old Nick to see his son essentially at all. So her plan to get out after the sick thing doesn't work is to pretend that Jack is dead and to roll him up in a rug, and she basically coaches him for like the entire week, like on how to stay still,
on how to be.
And her
dead,
plan is to convince old Nick that Jack is dead. He's rolled up in this rug, and to basically convince him to take him somewhere and bury the body.
Which, when she's coaching him, is another like, oh, there's just so many, like, it's a montage of basically like her unrolling him and her re-rolling him, and then there's one time where she like unrolls him and he's just like, I hate you, and he's just like with such compassion and such like, it's one of those screaming lines that like you rarely like, traitor.
And that was when she was like hatching that plan. I was like, this is never gonna fucking work.
Right, yeah.
Like, how is a little kid gonna stay still in this like rug, and like, how do we know that he's not just gonna like throw the rug in like an incinerator or something like that, rather than like taking it somewhere to bury it? But anyway, she wants him to get in the car or to carry the rug to the truck or whatever, and then she's coaching him on like, all right, like when you feel the car coming to a stop, that means it's a stop sign,
right?
And you want to, I forget how, if she says a certain amount of stop signs,
it's like 3 lefts or something.
Yeah, and she's like, you know, when he gets to a stop sign, wiggle, 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 to like get out of the rug, and then jump out of the car and find someone and say, I'm Joy Newsom's son, or something along the lines of like, because she's been a missing person for so long, like people are going to remember her name and be able to track them down. So he comes, he wants to like take a look at the body right away, and she like freaks out and gives like a really good performance in terms of like crying to convince him, like, you know, stay the fuck away from the body, just take him somewhere. I think she says like, oh, like make sure you bury him
by trees,
somewhere nice, by like a tree, blah blah blah. So he takes the rug out, puts it in the, there's a moment where he almost suspects something, like he picks the rug up, and I think maybe the kid moves or something, and he just kind of like stands there, and that's a really tense moment where you're like, oh, is he gonna like open up the rug? Right. Yeah, he gets it in the truck, and long story short, the kid is sort of able to escape. He jumps out, he notices him though and chases him down, but then a stranger fortunately is able to see them and see that the way that he's treating him, and the kid puts up such a fight that the guy essentially just drops the kid, old Nick, and runs away. And then old Nick... what?
Oh, never mind. Sorry. Are you still talking?
What are you going to say?
This is literally the only complaint that I have with it. Not the only complaint, but the only like almost like, would this character do this? Would old Nick really just be like, fine, whatever? Like
yeah, that was kind of like fortunate. But I think it was one of those things where like the kid was putting up a fight. He already looks suspicious, and I don't think he goes back to the, like, it's not like I think he was just ready to abandon the entire thing and be like, oh, the kid doesn't know where he came from. He's not going to be able to like lead them back to the shed. She'll just die in there, and that's fine. I'll just go start a new life somewhere.
Right, yeah.
Because I don't think the red truck ends up showing back up at the house when the police officers show up there. But anyway, this guy walking his dog, you know, obviously sees that something's wrong. Like, this guy's like trying to like drag this kid screaming back to his car.
Right.
And he's suspicious. So he calls the cops. The cops come. They're like interviewing, what's his name? Jack. And eventually through this really long, weird interrogation, just because he has no frame of reference for anything, like, has been outside of this room, this really clever detective is able to find the shed, and they save what's her face, Joy, and that's basically where the second half of the movie starts. Is them trying to adjust to life after Room, which you would think would just be like this happy, like, you know,
and it is happy at first.
Not necessarily happy, but just, you know, a good ending. But yeah, it is happy at first, but then you come to realize the really like sad, fucked up part is that like Jack has not known anything but Room. So he's not necessarily happy to like be out. And he even, you know, he asks to go back to Room. When are we going back to Room? And
Joy's got problems of her own, because I feel like you spend the first half of the film really being like, oh gosh, like this is so fucked up for Jack. Protect Jack at like kind of all cost. And you're just worried for him. Whereas the second half, you kind of want to do the same thing, but you very quickly find out that Joy is more of the one who's not adapting to the outside world. And it kind of goes along with the thing with, like, kids are just resilient, man. Like I was watching some documentary the other day about, like, you know, like families that are homeless. Like, you know, you go from having a house to, like, living out of the car, and the parents are like, oh, fuck. And the kids are just kind of like, oh, we're sleeping in the car now. Okay. Like, even though Jack will go to therapy for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
He's able to, you know, go with the flow, really.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's the one scene where there's like the doctor, he comes to the house, and Joy just like doesn't want to see him. Right. Whereas Jack is like starting to open up. He's like drawing pictures for him. And then later that day, Joy comes down and she kind of just has like a mini freak out where she's like, Jack, go play with your Legos. They give you all these Legos. Go play with them. And then her grandma is kind of like, what's going on? Like, you're acting weird. And she's like, oh, I want him to like focus on something. And it's the scene where like, I think the grandma even says something like, he's doing fine. Like, he's like doing like really, really well considering. And like, Joy is the one that's not really like adjusting to like life after that.
And just go back to
no, go on.
Oh, the this sounds super cliche, but that carpet scene in the truck and the Jack getting sick and everything, I feel like that literally had, this sounds like something like a review or like a quote would say, but I feel like those scenes had like so much more suspense than like 10 Hollywood like suspense thriller movies. Like it's just like you're just like, oh god, like I felt like I was gonna like throw up in the theater. Like you're just,
I think like the first half does a lot of good things just in terms of it sets up so much, it establishes so much, and then it makes the second half, which really there's not a whole lot that happens in the second half. There are some pretty big events, but there's a lot of just like Jack doing things.
Right.
And in like any other movie or without any other like setup beforehand, like it would have just been like a really boring second half. But because you've seen all the things that he's going through, like there, like he could just do anything, and it just like made me want to cry. Like him, like building Legos and like destroying Legos. Like I was ready to cry during that. Learning to go downstairs because there was no stairs in room. Like that like fucked me up. Like the one scene that I really really loved, I was like ready to bawl my eyes out, is so she, Joy, her mom and dad are still alive, but they've separated at this point, and her mom has remarried, or I guess is just living with this guy, Leo.
Right.
That's a whole other plot point that we'll get into, because Joy's dad doesn't really want to be there, just because the whole situation of it being a child born out of rape is just something that he can't wrap his head around,
which is something that's super important, and I'm so glad that they had in there. And William H. Macy handles it with such delicacy and just realism. That role is just it's very small role, but it's done very realistically. And again, he cannot make eye contact with his own grandson, and that's just kind of the end of that. Like he has to get out of there.
And then Leo is kind of just this guy who has no biological connection to these people, but is kind of just, thrown into the situation and ends up being the one that's like the first one outside of Joy that's able to make a connection with Jack. And there's that really beautiful scene where I think Joy's still sleeping somewhere, or maybe, I don't know if she's after she's gone to the hospital.
He's at the top of the stairs.
Is it when she's gone to the hospital at that point?
I think she's sleeping.
She's just sleeping. She sleeps a lot. And Jack's just at the top of the stairs playing with something, and then he sees Leo and he kind of like hides, and Leo like won't look at Jack, and he's just like, oh man, I wish there was someone here that I could play with.
Right. Yeah.
And he just kind of like plays with like Jack's like inquisitive nature, and it's just like the perfect way to get a kid like that like interested. And then the scene of just the two of them like eating cereal, and like Leo's talking to him, but like Jack is like actively offering up like his own thoughts to this like complete stranger. Right, and like knowing where he's come from, like I was just ready to like pull my eyes out during that scene, just like a simple scene like that. And then, oh god, the other scene when, because they keep talking about Leo's dog, who like they kept away because Jack had was going to have like reaction to the germs and whatnot. Right. Yeah. Since he hadn't really built
very
up
fragile immune system.
And then just the scene where Leo finally brings his dog to meet, which is just like it seems like something out of like a BuzzFeed article. Like, kid kept in a room meets a dog for the first time.
It's clickbait article,
but it still works. Like
you're not going to believe what happens next. They go on a walk.
I almost wish they would have just picked like a cuter dog, like because like I mean you could have had your pick of like any breeds, and then I would have been bawling if it was like a corgi or something like that. I would have completely lost my shit. It ends up being some kind of like rattier looking dog, but it's still like a cute scene, and just like him kicking the soccer ball, swinging on a swing set, like anything Jack can do in the second half is just gonna make us feel things.
Or just like I'm gonna go play with a friend, like that's like heartbreaking too. Ugh.
Going back to William H. Macy and that whole storyline, just talking about like scenes that made me just want to cry and slit my throat. The first scene where the grandparents, mom and dad, are reunited with Joy, I thought his acting was particularly good in that. And it's a very short scene, but it just shows like how impressive he is as an actor. And I almost for that reason, just because of how impressive he is, I wish that he was in the film more.
Right.
But even just in terms of the story, like I did like the fact of him leaving, but I felt like we needed closure somewhere at the end of him coming back, and we never really got that. And that was the only thing that I felt was like left undone in the movie was, I don't know, if, even if it was just some, a line towards the end of like Grandpa not coming back.
Right.
I just felt like it was just kind of like he was this, it should have been a more important thing, maybe, like, Joy would probably have more feelings about,
I guess, but I think it was also everything about their relationship and situation was like kind of a work in progress, you know, like it didn't seem so out of the ordinary for me. Mm-hmm. I don't know, but that was just me though.
The other, I guess, just talking the few things that I did have problems with. I mentioned it before. The narration in the film, which I understand it's probably taken right from the book, and I didn't know until after I saw the movie that the book is from the kid's perspective. But it just like in the movie itself, it didn't really have like a vessel. Like there was no like diary that he was writing into.
Right.
For those who haven't seen the movie, he's basically just talking to the audience in a very like kiddish voice, just like, I'm 5 years old today and I live in a room and there's real people and then there's TV people, and just like I know what it's doing. It's introducing us to hit the world way they live in, the language, the vocabulary, especially that he uses. And I know they were just taking it from the book, but in the movie there's not like a diary that he's writing into. There's no real reason for him to be talking to the audience, and they didn't reword it to be like talking to his mom or anything. So it kind of just felt out of nowhere, and it shows like the weaker side of Jacob Tremblay's acting. Like, in the other scenes, like he felt natural. He felt like in the moment, And then in these, it felt like it felt like a kid reading a script, like with someone in the room being like, all right, finish the line, finish the line.
Right, because it's kind of a harder concept to understand. Like, it's like a little more non-linear. He's not like so, like you said, in the moment. To get back to the before and after segment that I initiated around the start, just because we're getting to like all the after stuff. But I feel like the narration in the film, I feel like it was used pretty sparingly, like only a handful of times. And it was a device that was used, accordingly, and it did advance the plot. Again, I know where you come from, though. And the other thing I wanted to revisit, that is this film, at times, again, from my before, it does like toe the line of a Lifetime movie in terms of a plot just being something just so terrible that happened to like a mother, and a woman and a child, and that could, virtually happen to anybody. And that definitely crosses your mind at some point when you're watching the film. Like, oh my God, how would I deal with this these circumstances? But another thing I admire about the film is that they never suggest, like, can you imagine if this happened to you? Kind of like, there's no scenes, and I've seen so many movies do that, and I'm glad they didn't use that as a crutch.
The other like tiny small thing that I had a problem with, there's one scene where they're with a lawyer and they're like, these lawyer fees for the trial, they're going to get expensive. What most people will do is, just one, primetime special with the press, just to basically fund this entire thing. And I think the reason it comes about is Joy is just feeling like
she wants to get out of her parents' house.
She's like, oh, I need to get out of here. Like, she didn't say this place sucks, but she says something along those lines. So she agrees to do like a news interview to basically get money to move out somewhere, I think is her plan. So they do a news interview with some nondescript news anchor. I just felt like that whole thing felt a tiny bit unrealistic, where I just can't imagine a news anchor for a situation like that asking questions that like blatantly and like transparently like harsh. Like,
I don't know, I feel like 2020,
I felt like it was just like a weird like cliche stereotype, pigeonholing like the media, like, oh, they're all out for blood and they just want like that perfect question. Like, I feel like most anchors would at least still have like, even if it wasn't, just humanity and like being a decent person, would not be that like blatant and like transparent in like the question that they ask. in terms of just obviously just trying to get a rise out of someone. Like, what's the one question she asks? Like, you know, did you think about like killing yourself when you were in there? Like, why wouldn't you just why wouldn't you convince old Nick to
just take the baby
him away
to the hospital and
like
then
basically
just leave
insinuating
it there.
that she made the wrong choice by forcing to keep
why
Jake
why
there.
would you expose him to like this environment? Why not instead just convince old Nick to just drop him off at the hospital and non-instantaneously have him like live his own life kind of. And I think that is what drives her to take her or attempt to take her own life kind of thing.
I think it's directly related.
I actually like that scene because I mean, I have to think of it like 2020 and like who's that woman that like interviews people? I'm trying to think.
Nancy Grace?
No, it's maybe she has her own program. I don't know. But like she just asked like I mean she deals with people like this and she just asks very intrusive questions. Like I would just be super uncomfortable, like like being not I don't know. But I almost felt that they portrayed the media better than like a movie that's recently portrayed the media in that sort of sense, like Gone Girl. I thought
I was gonna say, I'm glad you brought that up. I was thinking about Gone Girl the entire time watching this.
Right. I think that this was a lot more realistic than whatever the fuck was happening in Gone Girl a lot of the time. But
did you actually see Gone Girl yet? Or
yeah, I saw it in theaters when it came out. Yeah. I think one of the only notes I have left, and it's just so random. I think we just passed over like this point, but I kind of like that old Nick wasn't painted so much as an antagonist, like or like a villain character the entire film, kind of.
Yeah.
They don't really spend a lot of time on him, and even the characters don't even really have that much of an ill will toward him. And I say that just because like when Joy is showing Jack like her yearbook, and she points out a picture of like her and her old track friends, and she's like, oh, it's like real track instead of like fake track in room. And then she like breaks down and she says like, yeah, we were all friends. They were just like me, except they got to go on and live a normal life. And it wasn't so much as, life happens, as much as it was like the world can be a cruel place and like it's rare, but things like this do happen, and people are like this, and old Nick is the source of my pain, but, human nature is just so shitty, and those circumstances were so unfair.
Yeah.
And she wasn't like, curse you, old Nick, kind of like, nobody ever says that.
And I don't know if it's so much like, as far as like Stockholm syndrome, but it's just kind of like he became a part of their circumstances and a part of their environment.
Exactly.
It wasn't like he, was bursting in there and like forcing anybody down.
Oh, Nick's back!
Yeah, like he came in and he like, I hate the way that I'm saying this because it sounds like we're justifying what old Nick is doing, but it's just the way that it became for them is that, they had to stop resisting at a certain point and accept their circumstances. And through that, I think it really perfectly portrays just how beaten down they've been into this situation over, the course of, 7 years for her, 5 years for Jack, and to the point where it's just, old Nick is here. All right.
Right.
Where, we'll even have a conversation with him about like things that we need, to get done.
Right.
But I guess to kind of bring us towards
the fingers
in the end of the movie, I really, really liked the scene where Joy sees her old room and it's been kept exactly how it is. And she kind of has a moment where she almost breaks down when she first see that. And I think Grandma even says, just like, yeah, like
right,
that it's been kept like this. And I really like that because of what happens later towards the end of the film, or actually basically the last scene in the film is we've seen that like Jack is progressing and he's probably going to be, for the most part, all right. If not, a little bit troubled. But he says at one point, can we go back and see room? So I guess they call up the cops. It looks like it's the cops that discovered them, and they go back and they see room, and it's all different. And he even says like, did they shrink room, or is it
right,
something along the lines like that?
Because the door's open and it's all of a sudden it's not like, there's sunlight in there, and it just,
well, and just he's seen how
exactly
big the world is outside of that. This is also reminding me of my other favorite scene from the movie, just to randomly throw it in there, when he is in the rug on the truck bed, and then he wiggles out of the rug, and he's just looking up at the sky, and like the music is like blaring at that point, because it's the first time he's ever seen more than just a square of sky, because they only have like skylight in the room.
Right.
I just thought that was a really beautiful scene. But to finish up this long point, I thought it was a relation in that scene where they go back to room to the scene where she goes to her room, where it's like she grew up in that room, and despite the fucked up circumstances of everything that happened in room, that's still where he grew up. He can't put negative feelings towards that, because
I didn't even draw a comparison between
that's
those
just all
two
he's
scenes.
known, and that I think she kind of realizes that when there's like a look on her face at one point where I felt like that's what's going on in her mind, is her making that connection to like, he grew up here. This is just, it's his childhood home for all intents and purposes. And I just thought that was a great end to the movie, to kind of make that connection. And while also showing, because he is realizing, that's when he has that line, like, oh, did it shrink? Like, he's going to be all right. And he's kind of just putting that room behind him. So I don't know. I thought that was a great ending to the movie.
This film is so fucking beautifully layered. And there's so many things where you can just really... like, investing in that first half pays off immensely in the second half. Just like you said, like, it's everything in the second half is like he could just be like look at somebody like from the weirdest angle, and you're just like, oh god, I'm gonna lose it. Like,
and this is, like you would think like the first half, because of all the fucked up stuff that's going on in their circumstances, you would think that would be the more like tear jerking half, but the tear jerking half is the second half, just everything that happens. Another scene I'm thinking about now that we didn't mention before, while Joy's in the hospital, and Jack like asks Grandma to cut his hair, because he's got this whole like Samson and Delilah thing where he says like, my strength comes from my hair,
right?
And she wants him to cut his hair, and just the interaction between the two of them, where it's just like you see him growing up as basically a normal kid, like he's going to be fine. And anytime he does interactions like that, it just like breaks my heart. And the one scene in that where he says, I love you, Grandma, like that's where I was like, oh god, I'm gonna lose it. I'm losing it.
Oh boy.
Never actually cried, but very close the entire time.
I cried like a good 3 or 4 times. That was rough, man.
Yeah.
I've never felt that way about a movie, really.
It is one of the more like unique plots.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we've had, like, kidnapping, we've had abduction, we've had, obviously, rape and whatnot and other ones. But I think that the most unique part is taking the aspect of a kid born in those circumstances and then sort of longing for them again. Like that childhood innocence of not knowing that it was really a bad situation that they grew up in, because he didn't know the world outside of it. Right. Like, that's just, I don't know, they're super interesting. But I guess we should probably bring ourselves to some fingers. Who's going first?
I don't know.
The eternal struggle. I think I know my rating. I don't know if I have too much more to say.
I don't really have too much more to say. And my rating is extreme.
Extreme.
I think I want to give it 5 fingers.
5?
Yeah. It's like this movie. It's exactly a week from when I saw it, and I saw
it last night.
Right? No, I can't even imagine what you're like, dude. I came home and I was just like laid out, like I was just like, man, like I was like a raw nerve in my bed, and I was just like, oh man. But it's again, we really didn't hear that much about it.
We didn't get into this yet, but it one of the lowest grossing Best Picture nominees of all fucking time.
Right. And that's the thing. We didn't know anything about this film, and the fact that I walked in with like a negative, like, I'm about to watch some like shitty Lifetime movie.
Yeah.
And then I walked out like that. It kind of reminds me of like my favorite film from last year was Whiplash. Again, I was like, what is this? Like, kind of.
Yeah.
And it was just some small indie film that like floored me, and it's so tremendous what you can do with so little and turn it into like such big emotions.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's everybody. I think everybody involved in this deserved a nominee. And
I mean, the few complaints that I had are just that they're very few. And it's I think just that fact is crazy that it's like one of the lowest grossing. I think the lowest, we talked about it before, is actually Amour, which only ended up grossing like 300,000 or something like that. This, I think, is grossing more now that since it's been nominated. Before it was nominated, I think it only grossed like $5 million, and I think it's doubled that since it's been nominated. So hopefully they've released it more.
Right.
But I still don't think it's had like a wide release. Like I couldn't find it at a lot of theaters. I had to find a more obscure theater to find it. But I think for my rating, I'm probably going to go with 4.5 fingers.
Right.
Just because I did have some complaints, so I can't give it necessarily a perfect score, but it was really damn good. Probably in like my top 5 of the year, which I was not expecting.
Same,
I didn't even expect it to be nominated for a Best Picture nominee. And even when it was, not that I thought it was a mistake, but I was like, all right, this will probably be like my least favorite.
Oh,
There's got to be a reason that it hasn't, that I haven't heard about it, or that it hasn't like, even seen a trailer about it, or that it hasn't been playing around me. And I guess that's just horrible marketing for some reason on A24's part.
They should be shot.
Fantastic movie that deserves much more. So I guess, let's see, that would not round out to 4.75, which will round down to 4.5. So that's the official finger score.
I would almost say this is like some sort of like essential viewing. I think I only said that about Spotlight. I would say that about like Ex Machina, even though we'll never review that.
Yeah.
And I'll say that about Room. And I think those 3 films this year were like my favorite.
I think we'll hear more about it after the Oscars, especially
Definitely.
because Brie Larson is probably going to walk away with the Best Actress for this one.
God, I hope so. This is the best actress I can think of in a very long time.
Yeah. So hopefully we'll hear more about it.
All right.
But let's just bring things to an abrupt end since we're over an hour here.
Yeah, and poor Joe. Joe's been, yeah. So we're gonna
tune in next week for
Brooklyn, if we can keep Joe awake for that. All right, so we're gonna close it out. We gave Room 4.5 fingers. Go see it. You will be destroyed emotionally.
You're tearing me apart, Lisa.